Welcome back to the channel. You know, I was sitting here thinking about something that probably a lot of you have experienced. Have you ever had that moment when someone totally underestimates you? They look at you, see your kindness, your gentle spirit, your refusal to get down in the mud with them, and they think, oh, they're so sweet, so innocent, so naive. They mistake your grace for weakness and your silence for ignorance. And in that moment, they decide to play a game with you, a little chess match. They're sure they've already won. They think you don't see the little jabs, the subtle manipulations, and the attempts to trip you up. They whisper behind your back, sow seeds of doubt, and try to dim your light, all while smiling to your face. They're so confident in their little scheme. They're so convinced you're just a pawn in their game. But here's the kicker, my friends. They're not playing with just anyone. They're playing with a chosen one. They're trying to outwit a soul who is guided by a power far greater than their own petty tactics. They're trying to fool someone who has been divinely protected and given a spiritual GPS that's always on point. And what they don't realize is that while they were busy plotting their little moves, you were being given divine downloads. While they were gossiping, you were receiving wisdom. While they were trying to dim your light, your spiritual fire was being stoked by the universe itself. So when they finally made their move, you were already 10 steps ahead, watching them fumble, not with anger, but with a quiet, knowing smirk. You weren't naive, you were patient, you weren't ignorant, you were observant, you weren't weak. You were waiting for the right moment to show them that a tranquil surface can hide the most powerful depths. Isn't it funny how they always underestimate the quiet ones? The ones who don't feel the need to broadcast every move, every thought, every feeling. They see your peace and think it's a sign of a boring, simple life. Little do they know that peace is a shield. It's the tranquility of a warrior who is so confident in their strength that they don't need to roar. It's the calm before the storm, and they were too busy being loud to notice the shift in the spiritual atmosphere. They made their play thinking you were a puppet on their strings, but you, my dear chosen one, you showed them who's the boss. You showed them that divine intelligence always trumps human cunning. You showed them that a pure heart is the most powerful weapon of all. And you didn't even have to raise your voice. You just had to be you. So if you've ever felt like someone was trying to play you for a fool, if you've ever been underestimated, if you've ever been laughed at for your kindness and your light, then this video is for you. This is your moment to reclaim your power, to understand the divine strategy that was at play, and to get a good laugh at their expense. This is for all of you who were told you were too soft, too gentle, or too kind, but who proved them all wrong with the quiet, unwavering power of your spirit. So let's dive into the 7 signs that they thought you were naive, but you showed them exactly who's the boss. Trust me, you'll want to stick around for every single one of these points, because each one is a gem that will help you stay awake and aligned on your spiritual journey. Let's get into it. Point 1. They mistook your patience for passivity. They thought your patience was weakness because they couldn't comprehend a mind that operates outside their impulsive, knee-jerk world. In their reality, speed is mistaken for strength, and if you're not reacting instantly, they assume you either don't care or lack the capacity to respond at all. But this perception says more about them than it does about you. They live in a constant state of emotional reactivity where every poke or provocation triggers an immediate flare-up, an exhausting cycle that gives them no time to think, only to react. You, however, are wired differently. You understand that patience is not the absence of action, it's the mastery of timing. History, strategy, and even the natural world agree timing often trumps force. Ancient samurai would sometimes hold back for hours before making a single decisive strike. Great generals from Sun Tzu to Napoleon emphasized waiting for the perfect alignment of conditions before acting. Even in nature, lions don't leap at the first sight of prey. They stalk, assess, and choose their moment with surgical precision. That's not passivity, that's power in its purest form. While they misread you as inactive, you were far from idle. You were observing, analyzing, and storing every detail they revealed, both consciously and unconsciously. Science backs this up. Research by psychologist Albert Mehrabian shows that communication is overwhelmingly nonverbal, with only about 7% conveyed through actual words, 38% through tone of voice, and 55% through body language. That means the truth often hides in micro-expressions, posture shifts, and tonal changes. Your patients gave you the time to detect those small cracks in their facade, things they thought were invisible. Each glance, hesitation, or contradictory statement became a puzzle piece you quietly collected until the picture was clear. To them, you were simply quiet. In reality, you were recording every frame of their performance like a mental surveillance camera. This is where the deeper wisdom of patience, what some call divine timing, comes into play. Forcing a moment before it's ready often leads to failure. In agriculture, a farmer doesn't dig up seeds to check progress. They trust the season and the soil. Spiritually, this mirrors the principle of discernment, knowing which opportunities are worth chasing now, which should be left to mature, and which are best ignored entirely. By refusing to be rushed, you avoided being pulled into unnecessary battles. You allowed truth to reveal itself without lifting a finger, a process as old as the universe itself. In physics, pressure and heat create transformation over time. In human dynamics, patience allows reality to emerge without force. Here's the part they never saw coming. Patience can be profoundly disarming. People who thrive on manipulation, drama, or control expect resistance. They expect you to argue, panic, or over-explain. When you don't react, they lose their script. They start improvising. And in improvisation, mistakes bloom. They may speak too much, contradict themselves, or act out in desperation, giving you exactly the evidence or leverage you needed. It's the silent trap you set, not to harm, but to clarify. You don't mirror their chaos because chaos feeds off chaos. You remain grounded, denying their game the oxygen it needs to survive. Then comes your move, not in haste, not from anger, but with deliberate precision. Like a chess grandmaster who has anticipated the endgame 20 moves in advance, you act when the board is in your favor. And because you've waited, your move lands with impact. It's not an impulsive reaction that can be dismissed, it's a calculated conclusion that can't be undone. By the time you step forward, the outcome is already written and the opposition is left with no counterplay. This is why your patience unnerves people far more than confrontation ever could. Confrontation they can brace for, they can prepare their defenses, rally their allies, and spin their narratives. But silence? Silence is unpredictable. It leaves them wondering whether you've given up, forgotten, or are quietly planning something they can't see. It gnaws at their certainty, creating an unease that grows with every moment you don't respond. And when the truth finally surfaces, they realize too late that your stillness was never weakness. It was strategy in motion. In the end, they walk away thinking you were slow to act, that maybe you hesitated or lacked courage. But you walk away knowing that patience allowed you to think at a speed they couldn't match, to see patterns they didn't notice, and to act with precision they couldn't defend against. You didn't just win the situation, you mastered the lesson. Patience isn't about waiting for the world to hand you an opening. It's about creating one in the shadows and stepping into it when the moment is right. Point 2, your forgiveness was seen as a weakness, chosen. 1, when you chose to forgive them, they mistook it for weakness. In their narrow lens of perception, they assumed forgiveness was a green light for more bad behavior, a silent permission slip that meant you'd tolerate betrayal, crossed boundaries, and broken trust without consequence. To them, the world is a chessboard of power moves where every action is calculated to dominate, control, and win. In their ego-driven game, mercy is seen as the currency of the powerless, and revenge is the proof of strength. But they've got it completely backwards. True forgiveness is not an act of surrender, it is an act of liberation. It takes far more inner fortitude to unclench the fists of rage than to throw a punch. Forgiveness demands self-control, spiritual awareness, and the courage to step outside the endless loop of retaliation. You, chosen one, don't forgive to let them off the hook. You forgive to unhook yourself from the emotional anchor that would otherwise keep you trapped in their storm. And no, you didn't do it because you're naive. You did it because you've reached a level of spiritual maturity where you understand the cost of carrying resentment. Science itself backs you up. Psychological research has repeatedly shown that holding grudges increases cortisol levels, spikes blood pressure, disrupts sleep patterns, and can even weaken your immune system. Studies from the Mayo Clinic and Stanford University have found that forgiveness reduces stress, improves heart health, and enhances overall well-being. But beyond the science, there's a deeper truth. Holding on to negative energy is like keeping a parasite in your soul. It feeds on your light, drains your vitality, and clouds your clarity. So you cut the cord, you shut the energetic door, you refuse to let their darkness leave fingerprints on the masterpiece that is your life, and oh, how that shook them. They expected you to stew in bitterness, to replay every hurtful word, to send long emotional messages at 2 in the morning, and to lose focus on your dreams while nursing your wounds. They wanted you tangled in the same swamp they've been living in for years. But instead, you did the unthinkable. You smiled, you breathed deeply, and you kept moving forward as though they were never the main story, just a passing footnote. This baffled them. They couldn't understand why their attempts to infect your peace failed. They didn't realize that they were never in control of your spirit to begin with. Here's the key. For you, forgiveness is not the same as reconciliation. You can release the anger without reopening the gates to your heart. In fact, most of the time, your forgiveness is paired with distance. You understand that boundaries are sacred. They're the spiritual guardrails that protect your peace and purpose. Forgiving someone doesn't mean you welcome them back into the same position they abused. It means you've risen above the need to keep them accountable in your mind, because life and God will take care of that without your interference. This unnerves them because your power is not rooted in revenge, but in restraint. You're not afraid of losing them. You've already found yourself. And deep down, though they'd never confess it, your ability to forgive without losing your self-respect terrifies them. It makes you untouchable. They can hurl insults, twist the truth, or try to sabotage your reputation, but you refuse to bite the bait. You've mastered the art of emotional sovereignty. Your peace is no longer a pawn in anyone else's game. This, chosen one, is your superpower. The strength to walk away with grace, to let go without losing yourself, and to rise without needing them to acknowledge their wrongs. What they don't realize is that your forgiveness is not weakness. It's dominance in its purest, most spiritual form. Revenge is reactive. Forgiveness is proactive. Revenge is the language of those chained to their wounds. Forgiveness is the language of those who've already healed. You're playing a higher game, one they can't even see, let alone win. So the next time they scoff at your forgiveness, thinking it's a sign you've given up the fight, know this: you've already won. They're stuck circling the same battlefield, swinging at shadows, while you've moved on to build empires in the light. You're not just miles ahead, you're in an entirely different arena. One where the real victory is not proving them wrong, but proving to yourself that nothing and no one can drag you back into the darkness you've already escaped. Point 3. They laughed at your trust in God and the universe. Oh, this one right here, this is a masterpiece in spiritual irony. Point number 3 isn't just about faith, it's about how your faith exposed the smallness of their vision. They saw your unwavering trust in God, in divine timing, and in the unfolding of the universe, and they genuinely thought you'd lost touch with reality. They whispered behind your back, rolled their eyes, and maybe even cracked jokes. In their world, control is king. They believe every outcome is a product of micromanaging, of hustling until exhaustion, of scheming until something breaks. Meanwhile, you stood there, calm, unshaken, even joyful, because you knew something they didn't. There's a higher plan at work. And here's the kicker. While they were losing sleep, sweating bullets over every detail, you were resting in the peace that surpasses all understanding. See, this is where the wisdom of surrender kicks in. In psychology, there's something called locus of control. People with an external locus believe life just happens to them, while those with an internal locus believe they can control it all. But there's a third category that hardly gets talked about, the spiritually aligned. That's you. You understand you do your part, but you trust God with the rest. You're not reckless. You're strategic in faith. You take steps, but you don't stress about the terrain because you know the path is already paved. They thought that was weakness. They thought you were naive, just sitting around waiting for blessings to fall from the sky. What they didn't see is that your faith was actually an active force, a shield, like it says in Ephesians 6:16. Above all, taking the shield of faith, wherewith ye shall be able to quench all the fiery darts of the wicked. That shield didn't just protect you from external attacks. It kept you from sabotaging yourself with fear and doubt. And oh, when the tables turned, that was the plot twist they never saw coming. While they were holding their plans together with duct tape and desperation, yours were unfolding like clockwork. They were the headless chickens chasing after every opportunity with panic, while you were walking in stride, one foot in front of the other, on a road divinely aligned. That's not magic, it's alignment. That's not luck, it's preparation meeting God's perfect timing. The great Maya Angelou said it best. You may encounter many defeats, but you must not be defeated. They saw your setbacks and thought you'd given up, but you understood something deeper. Defeats aren't dead ends, they're detours toward destiny. And the beautiful thing, your lack of fear in the face of uncertainty made them uncomfortable because it reminded them of what they lacked, peace. So yes, they laughed. They dismissed your trust in the higher plan, but now they can't ignore it. Your results speak louder than their doubts ever did. Your calm is proof of your connection to something greater. And that kind of power can't be faked, bought, or stolen. It's divine. It's unshakable. It's you, walking your chosen path with the confidence of someone who knows that what's meant for you cannot miss you. And that's why you're still standing while they're still scrambling. Game, set, match. Faith wins. Point 4. Your kindness was interpreted as a lack of boundaries. They thought your kindness was weakness. They looked at the way you gave without hesitation, forgave without holding grudges, and spoke life into people even when no one was doing the same for you. In their mind, this meant you could be molded, used, and even manipulated. They figured, chosen ones don't fight back. They're too good-hearted for that. But here's the thing. Goodness is not gullibility, and love is not the same as letting yourself be mistreated. Your kindness was never about letting anyone cross your boundaries. It was about choosing to see the best in people, even when they showed you their worst, and yet they misread your compassion as permission. What they didn't realize is that a chosen one's heart is wired differently. Science even backs this up. Psychologists have studied the connection between empathy and strong personal values, finding that highly empathetic people often have an equally strong sense of justice. That means you might forgive, but you also know when to draw the line. And when you finally do, it's not explosive or cruel, it's deliberate, precise, and firm. You don't slam the door in anger, you simply close it and lock it because your peace is non-negotiable. They weren't ready for that moment when you said no, and meant it. You didn't shout, you didn't beg them to understand, and you didn't even over-explain. Your tone was calm, but it carried the full weight of self-respect. It's the kind of no that echoes in their mind later, because it wasn't about punishment. It was about preservation. You've learned the spiritual truth that your energy is sacred and not everyone deserves access to it. Many people don't understand that setting boundaries is actually one of the most loving things you can do, not just for yourself, but for others. By saying no when someone crosses the line, you teach them how to value not just you, but also the relationships in their life. Boundaries are not walls. They are gates. And as the gatekeeper of your own life, you decide who gets in and how far they're allowed to go. For chosen ones, this boundary setting is spiritual work. Every no you speak in alignment with your values strengthens your light and protects your divine assignment. This is why, after you set that boundary, you noticed something. Some people disappeared. They weren't there for you, they were there for what they could take from you. And the moment you stopped being an endless resource, they lost interest. Painful? Maybe. Necessary? Absolutely. What's even more ironic is that the same people who once thought they could walk all over you now respect you more than ever. They might not admit it out loud, but they've seen that you can be loving and strong, kind and unshakable. You've shown them a rare balance, a heart that gives, but not at the cost of its own beat. So yes, chosen one, your kindness confused them, and your boundaries shocked them, but in the end, your strength defined you. You didn't just protect yourself, you set the standard. And those who can't handle it, they were never meant to be part of your journey anyway. Point 5, they thought your silence meant you were ignorant. They were so loud, so busy talking that they couldn't hear your quiet observation. They thought because you weren't constantly speaking up or getting into debates that you didn't know what was happening. They mistook your silence for ignorance. But oh, the joke was on them, wasn't it? Because while their mouths were running at full speed, you were standing there, calm, patient, and watchful, like a master chess player seeing 5 moves ahead. They had no idea that your stillness was a strategy, not a sign of weakness. Silence for the chosen one isn't emptiness, it's power. It's a skill that's been celebrated for centuries in both spiritual and leadership traditions. In fact, ancient Stoic philosophers like Epictetus often warned against speaking too much, reminding us that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason, so we can listen more than we speak. While they were busy broadcasting their half-truths and overinflated egos, you were practicing the art of deep observation. You weren't just hearing their words. You were listening to the pauses, the hesitations, and the nervous laughter in between. You were watching their eyes dart when a certain topic came up. You were reading their body language, the crossed arms, the forced smiles, the sudden need to look at their phone. This was your laboratory, and they didn't even know they were the experiment. You see, noise is easy. Anyone can fill a room with sound. But to master silence, that's rare, that's discipline, and it's exactly why you stood out. Spiritual wisdom tells us that those who talk the loudest are often trying the hardest to be believed, by others and sometimes by themselves. But the one who stays silent is often the one who already knows the truth. And the truth doesn't need to shout. The most dangerous person in the room isn't the one making the biggest scene, it's the one quietly taking notes in their mind, filing away every inconsistency, every slip of the tongue, every emotional reaction. You were the spiritual detective, collecting not just facts, but patterns. You understood motives before they were even spoken. You could see the story beneath the story. And because you didn't feel the need to constantly insert yourself into the noise, you gave people the space to reveal themselves. And here's the beauty of it. When you finally did speak, when you dropped that one well-timed truth, it was like striking a match in a dark room. Everyone noticed, everyone felt it. And unlike their endless chatter, your words carried weight because they were backed by hours, days, maybe even years of silent knowing. That's the thing about silence. It builds pressure. And when it finally releases, it's unforgettable. They thought your silence meant you were out of the loop. But in reality, you were holding the entire map. And now they can't unsee it, because when the chosen one breaks their silence, it's not random, it's revelation. It's the moment the entire game changes. And trust me, that's when they realize they should have been paying more attention to the one who said the least. Point 6. Your authenticity was seen as being weird chosen. 1. Let's get real. Point 6 is that exact moment when you stopped dimming your light just to make others comfortable, and the ripple effect was instant. The truth is, the second you stopped apologizing for being exactly who you are, you disrupted the script. You didn't just walk to the beat of your own drum, you built your own drum, composed your own rhythm, and danced in a way they couldn't choreograph. And for a world trained to seek approval before taking a step, that was unsettling. People couldn't understand why you weren't addicted to the dopamine rush of likes, comments, and digital applause. You weren't trying to win at their game. You were playing an entirely different one. Here's the psychological breakdown. Humans are wired for herd mentality because once upon a time, conformity meant survival. If the tribe ran from a predator, you ran too, or you didn't live to tell the tale. But spiritually, that same conformity can become a slow, silent death to the soul. When you refused to mimic the herd, it wasn't rebellion for rebellion's sake, it was alignment. And that's where the discomfort came in. You became a living reminder that people have a choice to live differently, and that truth stings for those who've built their identities around blending in. That's when the labels fly. Strange, eccentric, too much out there. But let's decode that. What they're really saying is, I can't predict you, I can't control you, and I can't box you in. Authenticity, chosen one, is your divine signature, your spiritual fingerprint from the Creator. Science tells us no 2 fingerprints are identical. Spiritually, no 2 souls carry the exact same light. And while they were perfecting their impression of someone else, you were perfecting yourself. That's why you stand out without even trying. Your authenticity isn't just a personality trait, it's a frequency. People can scoff publicly, but in secret, they wish they had your courage to be real without permission. History's greats prove the pattern. Nikola Tesla was mad before he was a genius. Maya Angelou was different before she was a legend. Galileo was dangerous before he was a visionary. Society loves originality, but only after it's safe to praise it. You're not waiting for the applause. You're the living, breathing evidence that staying true to your soul's blueprint is the highest rebellion against a system that feeds on sameness. Here's the kicker. Authenticity is rare because it's risky. You risk being misunderstood. You risk walking alone. You risk having your truth twisted. But the rewards, they're unshakable. Peace of mind, clarity of purpose, a deep bone-level knowing that you are exactly who you were created to be. That's why your very presence feels like both a mirror and a threat. You show people the freedom they've been too afraid to claim. So the next time someone calls you weird, wear it like a crown. Because in a world obsessed with carbon copies, weird means you're an original. And chosen one, the creator doesn't make mistakes, only masterpieces. You were never meant to blend into the background. You were born to be the art that stops people in their tracks. And whether they love it or not, they can't unsee it. Point 7, they misjudged your solitude as loneliness. Chosen ones, here's the thing they never saw coming. Your solitude is not a prison, it's your palace. When they caught a glimpse of you sitting alone at a cafe, walking alone in the park, or spending weekends tucked away at home, they wrote their own little story in their minds. Poor thing, they must be lonely. They assumed that because they can't go 24 hours without constant noise, validation, or social media applause, you must be suffering in silence. But that's the beauty of being a chosen one. You operate on a completely different frequency. Your alone time is not empty, it's overflowing with spiritual richness. While they see 4 walls, you see an open gateway to God's presence. While they hear silence, you hear divine instruction, inner healing and clarity whispering through your soul. This misunderstanding isn't new. History has shown us time and time again that some of the most spiritually awakened, world-changing individuals were people who spent significant time in solitude. Think of Moses spending 40 days and nights on Mount Sinai receiving the 10 Commandments. Think of Jesus retreating to the wilderness for 40 days before beginning his ministry. Think of prophets, monks, and sages who withdrew from the chaos of the world to hear from the source without interference. This is not isolation, it's consecration. The crowd calls it being antisocial. Heaven calls it being set apart. What they don't realize is that your solitude is where you recharge your spiritual battery. Every moment spent in prayer, meditation, or simply resting in God's presence is like plugging your soul into the ultimate power source. You're not avoiding people because you dislike them. You're aligning yourself so deeply with the divine that when you do step back into the world, your presence shifts atmospheres. You become the calm in the storm, the light in the darkness, and the voice of reason when everyone else is driven by noise and fear. And that's intimidating to those who can't function without external validation. The truth is, people who fear being alone often project that fear onto others. They see solitude as punishment because they've never experienced the peace that comes with it. But chosen ones, solitude is a sacred appointment. It's where God reveals your next steps, where he heals wounds you didn't even know you had, and where he strengthens your spirit for battles others don't even see coming. The world runs on distraction. You run on divine connection. That difference is why you can walk into a room and command respect without saying a word. So when they try to save you from your alone time with invitations you don't need, pity you didn't ask for, or comments about how you should get out more, smile and keep your peace. Because you know something they don't. Your solitude is the reason you can face life's storms without falling apart. You're not lonely, you're in holy company. And when you step back out from that sacred space, you don't come out empty, you come out glowing, armed with wisdom, clarity, and an unshakable spirit. That, my dear chosen ones, is how you remind the world that your strength isn't built in the spotlight. It's forged in the quiet where only God can see. And that's exactly why you'll always be the one they can't figure out and can't replace. So there you have it, my beautiful chosen ones. The next time someone tries to underestimate you, understand that it's often a reflection of their own limitations, not yours. Science even shows that people tend to project their insecurities onto others, a psychological defense mechanism known as projection. When you stand in your truth, your energy speaks louder than any words, and that unsettles those who operate from fear or ego. Your divine qualities, empathy, intuition, and resilience, aren't weaknesses. They're rare and powerful traits that many can't comprehend. Throughout history, from biblical prophets to modern visionaries, those with a higher calling have been misunderstood, underestimated, and even opposed. Yet their impact has been undeniable. The light within you is not meant to dim to make others comfortable. It's meant to shine so brightly that it illuminates the path for others. Remember, you are divinely guided, protected, and loved beyond measure. You are not naive. You are wise, discerning, and spiritually awakened. Every challenge you face is not an obstacle, but a stepping stone shaping you into who you're meant to become. So keep walking in faith, keep radiating your light, and know without a doubt that you've got this. Stay blessed, stay powerful, and stay awake.